What's up guys, Ryan here from Taxi Garage, and today we're going to be installing a Taxi Garage 36 volt battery on your standard Crazy Cart. The first thing you'll need is a Phillips head bit on your gun or your hand tool. You can use a regular Phillips hand tool and remove both of your covers off of your stock Crazy Cart. Generally, it is recommended when you upgrade the battery that you do leave the covers off. The covers don't fit with the battery installed. Obviously, you could notch the covers with a cutting tool to fit it all, but
some people do that.
It's not really worth it because when you're beating these things up, the motor needs some airflow, and it's very helpful to get that extra bit of air on the motor.
Let her breathe.
If you don't plan on reusing these screws, throw them away, just like what we're going to do. The next thing we're going to do is remove your stock battery. And to do that, I will swivel the cart and I will show you the first step to removing the battery. There's a wing nut here, and you want to go ahead and remove that wing nut. Sometimes they might be a little tight. You might need to put a wrench on that, but this one is just the right amount of force where I can do it with my fingers. And from there, it slides out the bottom of the cart. Boom, you have that. Throw that away. The next step is removing your Allen on this side of the battery bracket, and that is a 5mm Allen. Go ahead and take a gun, remove that bolt, slide the bracket out to the left, and you've now removed your battery bracket. Now, the best way to remove the batteries is from the right side, and they slide out very easily, just like so. We like to hold them in our hands the whole time just so we don't scratch the chassis. And then you'll want to take your 4-pin clip, push the clip down, and unclip it so you can remove your batteries. We also removed this factory foam piece. It's not needed. So, one thing that we like to do is we like to have everything plug and play. And what's included in the battery is a jumper harness that allows you to take your factory Razor controller and adapt it like so. Plug in our jumper, and now that will plug in directly to our Anderson connector that we have on our 36 volt battery. There is a factory zip tie on your wiring coming out of the controller. Be sure to snip that zip tie and not any of the wires coming out of the controller. Then the next thing you'll want to do is you'll want to tuck these wires in a nice clean way to where the battery can be installed and not interfere with these connectors. So what I like to do is I like to shove the throttle connector up to the top in this trough up here, and you'll see when you flip the clip towards the inside of the throttle connector that it's actually quite easy to get it to tuck up into here and be out of the way for when you go to install the battery. And the same goes for these two connectors. This connector you can actually shove up behind the controller. So I actually take that and I shove that other connector up behind the controller. So basically both connectors are tucked up into the top trough of this upper support. So when we install the battery, that we're not interfering with these connectors. So the only thing that you should have dangling here is your dangle dongle dingly duke harness that adapts your factory wiring to your 36 volt Taxi Garage battery. So the fuse on the 36 volt battery exists on the front part of the harness that it comes with. And it has a 30 amp. Does it
ship with that in already though?
It ships with this 30 amp fuse installed in your battery already. And basically if you ever run into an issue later down the road, this is a nice safety feature that in case you overload the cart or something like that, this fuse will pop and the cart won't turn on, and it's very easy. You just unbolt your battery and you can replace this fuse and you're back on the road. So I like to lift the drift bar and I like to lay the battery just alongside the cart, and I will go ahead and install the Anderson connectors. You can see that red goes to red and black goes to black. I slide those in, and the next thing that I'll do is I'll actually slide these black rubbers back so I can see these circles, right? And that's where our lock comes into play. This is the Anderson lock, and you can see it has these two tangs that come out that are going to stick into the two holes I just showed you on the connector. And then it also has this rectangular slot that allows you to slide in this zip tie and lock this piece into your Anderson connector. Just like I showed you earlier, I slid back these boots and I'm going to install the Anderson lock just like so. And then from there I slide the boots back forward And then I will now take my zip tie and shove it into the rectangular hole, wrap it around the connector, and I have now pulled it tight to where my Anderson lock is fully in and I can no longer separate connection. So it's very important that you get this connected nice and even to where all the holes are lining up and the red is on red and black is on black, simply because your cart will not work if you do not do that. And then before you continue with your install, you do want to turn your cart to the on position, lift the front of it, and confirm that you are getting power to the motor by simply just putting a little bit of gas into it. So here, that now confirms that when we go to do the complete install of this battery, we are not wasting our time after we've already installed it, wondering why the cart doesn't run. So then the next thing we like to do is have very clean installs here. These are flush cutters. We like to run this right up against the edge of the zip tie and cut that nice and flush, so that way you do not have any sharp ends to either cut yourself with or get in the way of any of your wiring. So boom, we have that. And now I will shove the connections back up to where I had them, so that way it is now easy for me to slide this battery into position. And what I do like to do is I like to rest this connection on top of the battery box. So the jumper harness, I will rest it outside of the battery. And then after I slide the battery in, I will kind of maneuver this back in, so that way everything is nice and tucked and hidden. So you can see I'm just gently pushing the wires up out of the way, the throttle connector, the motor connection, and now the battery connection.
Just a little finesse.
Takes a little bit of finesse, but once you get it, it makes for a very clean install.
You don't like wires hanging out around here outside.
No, we like everything to be neat and tidy. So you can see that I have now installed the battery and all my wiring is tucked away. Nothing's hanging outside the battery on both sides. You can see the wiring is sitting on top of the battery box and it's out of the way. And I can now line up my two 4mm Allen key bolts and thread them into the factory stanchion.
Included battery hardware. This is 2 of 3 included battery hardware, right? There's one more screw.
Exactly. So these are the two 4mm Allen heads that screw into the battery box into the factory stanchion here, and they have this nice shiny washer thanks to our hardware provider, and it makes it for a very clean install. So one thing I also recommend to do is put a little bit of lubricant on these, because the threads on these are not always that great. So what I'm going to show you is we have some lubricant here at the shop. Any type of Sil-Glide is what we use here. I generally take just a little dab and I put a little bit on the bolts. Just a very little bit. And just that little bit prevents the threads from getting cross-threaded when you're installing them. Anti-seize works well too, but no one likes anti-seize on their hands because it never comes off. So I have my 4mm Allen, I have my 4mm bolt, and what I'm going to do is I'm looking in through this hole and I'm lifting the box, so I now know that the bolt is aligned with the hole in the factory Crazy Cart. And of course, try not to drop your hardware or your tools. And then definitely thread these in by hand at first. And you can see how easy that goes in. It's not fully threaded, which is just how I like it. I just like to get them started. And then I come to the other side and I do the same thing. I'll bend down and I'll look inside and I will confirm that I do see the hole in the factory stanchion. I'll take my tool, insert it into the 4mm, and I will begin hand threading these. And I will continue to hand thread these until they are not fully tight, because the next step is putting in the other third screw from the bottom of the battery box, which holds it downward and locked into the frame of the cart. And then after that screw, I will completely tighten these. But for now, I'm just going to hand tighten these. Both of my bolts are just hand tight, and now I'm going to stand the cart up or flip it upside down, and I'm actually going to drill into the battery box to install our third screw that allows the battery to be locked into the chassis. guys.
The whole line up perfectly.
So this is an 1/8 inch drill bit, and I'm going to take my drill bit and drill through this factory hole where the original J-hook went into for the factory battery clamp, and I'm actually going to drill into our battery box just until I feel that I've popped through the other side. Obviously you don't want to drill through into the battery, you just drill through about 1/2 inch, and once you've done that, you'll feel that it pops through the plastic, and you've now completed the amount of depth that you need to install your screw. This is the last screw that comes in your Taxi Garage 36-volt battery kit, and this screw is what you'll be putting into the hole that you just drilled into your battery. And of course,
hold that battery into place.
I just start it by hand, and then I take my #1 screwdriver, and I'm also reaching here and I'm holding the battery box. I'm actually wrapping my hands around it and pushing it up towards the chassis to ensure
Nice
that
fit and fitment.
Exactly, that I'm getting a nice fit and fitment as I screw this in. And what this is doing is it's pulling the battery tight up against the chassis, because if we just use those 2 side bolts, the battery box could bounce up and down and eventually unscrew itself from the 2 screws. So we've incorporated the 3rd screw to not allow that to happen and give it that extra level of protection and quality engineering behind our products. Now that that's done, I will flip the cart back over and I will completely tighten the 2 4mm bolts on the battery. Just gonna tighten them up. And definitely do this with a hand tool. You do not want to use a gun when doing the final tightening of these. And very simply put, you can pick up the cart.
Voila!
When it's properly installed. And that just shows how strong our battery box is and how good of a design we have here. And we hope you guys enjoy it. 3, 2, 1. That's a proper setup right there.